And I'm so glad to have a recruiter who's a known recruiter on my podcast. Recruitment is one of my favorite subjects. Yeah, we are ready? Rolling in. Hannah,
Thank
so
you.
glad to have you. And I'm so glad to have a recruiter who's a known recruiter on my podcast. Recruitment is one of my favorite subjects.
Okay, that's good.
Reason being is because I know very less of it.
Okay.
Right? And I am hungry for information. I'm hungry for knowledge. And that's why my passion about this podcast. And I'm so glad to have you here. Why don't you spend maybe 5 minutes or maybe 3 minutes to tell something about yourself, who you are, where you work, and your life experience?
Sure. So, I guess from a recruitment perspective, so I've been in the industry for 14 years, which is crazy when I say it out loud. It actually scares me quite a bit. I started off in the UK, as you can probably tell, I'm English.
Yep.
And I think, like a lot of recruiters, actually, I really fell into it. I had a friend that needed someone quite confident just to come in and help answer some phone calls. And that was essentially where my recruitment career started. And yeah, like I said, 14 years down the line, I'm still in it. I've worked for a number of different kind of recruitment agencies. I've always been agency side as opposed to internal.
Mm-hmm.
And landed in Sydney about 6 years ago and worked for a fantastic agency, Bluefin Resources, which is where I still am now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the account director across marketing and brand.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, my function is to work with specialists within the marketing realm and recruit for businesses, to be honest, really broadly across industries. I don't necessarily hone in on a particular industry. I've had the luxury of working with quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, like I said, I came to Australia 6 years ago for a year, and I'm still here. And I'm with an Australian, so I think I'm staying.
So definitely like the weather.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
nice. So one thing you said very interesting, and I want to dwell on this one, right? So you said I work in an agency as compared to internal recruiters and internal recruiter to our audience, because someone as uneducated, unaware like me, we see recruiters as recruiters. So we don't see them internal or external, or sometimes we go like, yeah, all recruiters are same. Are all recruiters same?
No, there's so many different ways of recruitment, and even agency businesses operate in slightly different ways. They can have recruiters that only specialise in, say, contract recruitment, and they can have recruiters that specialise purely in perm, or you can do a bit of both. The difference with obviously internal recruitment is a lot of larger matrix organisations these days will have really, really good and really successful internal talent acquisition teams.
Right.
So they're
Talent acquisition.
Talent
That's the word
is
they
the
use
fancy
instead of
word.
recruiters.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay.
They've given themselves that title, which is great because it differentiates them from us. But they are fantastic. So they sit within a lot of the larger organisations and essentially operate from an internal stance to sell that one business's brand and EVP and get the engagement from individuals or candidates on the market directly.
What's the advantage of having talent acquisition versus hiring a recruiter, or the otherwise?
I think it's two sides. I think for those reasons, like you've got someone that's internal, they live and breathe your business. They are the perfect person to sell it. Hopefully they like that organisation and they're doing well themselves, so they've got that opportunity to kind of really hone in and focus on finding the top talent.
Yep.
What sometimes can happen though is because they are maybe a little bit broader, they don't necessarily specialise in any one particular area of recruitment. Like I said, I sit within marketing, is that they won't have, the opportunity to reach the best people in the market.
Right.
And they'll rely a lot on active applications, whereas recruiters within the agency side, like for me, for example, I'll work with who I think's best in the market for a role, as opposed to who's best in on the market and that's active. So it's slightly different way, I guess, a bit more headhunting from a agency side. And again, like I said, we really specialise in specific fields. So
can I paraphrase something to create a controversy?
Go for it.
Okay, so I would say you are someone who's very specialized in a particular niche.
Yeah.
Right. And talent acquisition specialists, internal one, are more generic. So they get a requirement. Their specialization is that they know the organization better than you.
Yeah.
Your specialization is that you know the candidate better than them.
Mm-hmm.
You know the market better than them. You know the job better than them. Would that be a fair statement to say?
Look, I don't think it would be like who's better or who's not. I think it would have to be like who's going to give the best opportunity to find that individual for them. I think, look, in some instances you do have internal talent teams that will specialise and hone in on particular areas.
Yep.
But when they're really, really large organisations, they've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of roles. So it's going to be very difficult for them to give the man hours to a particular area. So probably in that regard, then yes, an agency recruiter that will specialise in a space will have their, will know a little bit more about the market, will know the trends, will know what individuals are looking, for, because our job essentially day to day is to speak to those people in the market and find out what they want, what the trends might be, what's changing, what updates there are, what technology they want to use, what they're looking for from their next employer, so that we can then again from a client side push that back with our clients and the internal talent teams and work with them to kind of find the best people together.
Hannah, would that be fair to say then that for larger organization they can afford to have an internal talent acquisition team?
Yeah.
And for medium to small businesses, they would rather outsource it to someone, some experts like yourself, who can then find the best talent from the market. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of like smaller organisations will have maybe, their HR professionals will take on the hat of the recruiter every now and again.
Yep.
And that's generally where, you can engage with a recruiter externally and they can add a little bit more to the service. But yeah, I would have thought generally the talent acquisition teams are, when they're teams and they're larger, they are in those big organisations.
I see. I learned so much there. Because for me, recruiters were recruiters, so or talent heads, right? So,
yeah.
what does a day look like in a recruiter's life? I'm keen. I want to know.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I always like to look. I'm one for structure. Personally, I like to have a bit of structure. So for me, I'm a creature of habit. I get my morning coffee. I'll check in with the team first thing, just make sure they're set up for their days. Make sure that they're comfortable with what they need to do. I love a to-do list. I've worked from a to-do list. I think from one of my very early jobs in recruitment, my manager at the time was like, you need a to-do list every day. You've got to do it the day before you come into work, and then the next day you set up. So that for me is really key. But on the other hand of that is that it can change within, a phone call. You might have your day planned and then a great new job comes in, or a fantastic candidate that you really want to speak to is available for a call, or you get asked to go and grab a coffee with a client, and that's something that then you can kind of adapt to. But I think fundamentally a recruiter's day would be quite structured. Again, there's some kind of core activities that you want to get.
Like what?
So again, like meeting candidates. So I think we're in the people business, right? I think recruiters have to be people. And for me, it's all about connecting. It's all about communicating and like I said, understanding what my market's doing. So the only way I'm going to know what's happening is meeting with people, interviewing candidates, interviewing clients, understanding what their needs are, understanding what changes they might have coming up in the organisation that will open up an opportunity. So there's those kind of key things I think are definitely, always going to be day to day. But then also you've got things like the sales aspect of, getting to that point of how do you get a meeting or how do you get a job to work on. So
have I heard.
Yeah.
Recruiters are half people's business and half sales. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I think yes, in a certain regard, like we definitely have to wear multiple hats throughout, our day. But I think there's still, for me anyway, I've always just been me. I always just try and be Hannah whatever I'm doing,
Yep.
whether it be I'm trying to sell myself to a client to work with them on a great job, or whether it be that I'm engaging with a candidate and I really want to represent them to a job over another agency. So I think there's a huge human element to it.
Right.
And I think that's, for me, that's always worked.
I think that's a very interesting point, because in the end, people do businesses with humans, right? People
Absolutely.
do businesses with people, right?
Yeah.
And you have to set up that aura, or I would say that wavelength with your customer, that they are comfortable with working with Hannah. They know Hannah.
Yeah, exactly.
And once they get that comfort, they're more than happy to give you their business.
Exactly. It's like anything, when you're buying a car, when you're, thinking about buying a house, when you're, thinking about a new job. These are some of the biggest, or are the biggest decisions in people's lives. You're going to do that from someone that you like, essentially, or someone that you trust.
Yep.
So that's kind of the way that I've always essentially approached it, and really thought about, okay, how would I want to be treated, or how would I want that service and things to look like?
That's really nice. Now, let me throw a hard ball. Can I?
Okay.
Can I? Here's a
Yeah.
hard ball. Ghosting. I heard so many times, like maybe around 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I was looking for a job. I witnessed a lot of ghosting as well myself, but also because I had a strong network, so I could get the job from my network as well. But for those who are just fresh into the market, they take so much time in perfecting their resume, spend loads and loads of time in filling up 12 pages of application, and then they get an automated email saying that thank you for applying, we'll get back to you, and then get back to you never actually comes. And we have heard within like 3 months, 4 months, they get an email saying that you were not qualified. So I collected few emails from past 2 years. Most of the common language they use is thank you for applying. We had tremendous amount of applications for this one. At this moment, unfortunately, you were not qualified, but we will get back to you. But there might be some legal implications for them to give you why you were not qualified, which I understand. But that time, they take forever. Is ghosting a myth, or does that really happen in the industry?
I think people probably feel that way sometimes. I think, look, there's some context behind it, and like you've kind of mentioned it a lot there. I think if you think about the average recruiter, we're generally working anywhere between 10 to 20 jobs at any one time.
Wow.
If you apply and put an advert out, or if you've reached out to
Can I
your
pause you there,
network-
not being rude? 10 to 20 jobs. When you say 10 to 20 jobs, you're saying 10 to 20, filling up 10 to 20 positions a day.
No, not a day. No. So
At
any one time.
Yep.
So at any one time, you might be working on 10 what we would call live roles. So they're roles that are active on market. You have the engagement from the client. You've got candidates in process. You are already you might be talking to new candidates about that role. You have advertised those opportunities because you want to, essentially the end goal is to fill that role, right? So at any one time you work in those. That won't all happen at the same time. Permanent roles, there's at the moment generally a kind of lead up time of about 6 to 8 weeks to fill a permanent role.
Okay.
Which is very different from what it was. It used to be a lot shorter. That has changed a little
6
bit
to
in the
8
market.
weeks. Why is that?
Do you know what? I don't know. I find it frustrating myself. I think processes generally internally take a little bit longer.
Is that they can't make decision, or they're not sure?
Sometimes it's people are away. I think this kind of time of year as well, a lot of people go away. We've obviously just had kind of Easter and things like that as well. So people haven't been there. So they might have started a process, interviewed, on first stage basis, and then they've gone away for 2 weeks. Or we've also had the dreaded COVID situation where people have had to sign off for a couple of weeks. They can't come back into the office. So that's kind of put things on hold. I think for me that is a key piece for a candidate and things that they should look for as well, which I'm sure we'll come onto a bit later. But you want that engagement there from a company. And I think that sometimes can be the detriment of an organisation if they're not keeping that engagement, or they're not essentially giving that feedback in a timely manner. Can be a little bit more
right. So okay, so the way I see it, the process of recruitment or filling up a position has gone from say for example 4 weeks to now 6 to 8 weeks
Yeah.
for a lot number of reasons.
Yeah.
And in that particular time frame, organizations don't get back to candidates to keep them warm. Keep them warm, right? And that doesn't happen. Hence ghosting.
Yeah.
Hence they feel like they're being ghosted, no one is coming back to them, etc.
Yeah. So again, like with that kind of volume, like you've got to think if a recruiter is advertising 10 or 15 of their 20 jobs, and they get 100 applications or 150 applications on every single role, there's just not the man hours, unfortunately, to dedicate a call to each of those candidates that's applied, which is why most people get that generated response of your application's been received, we'll let you know if you've been shortlisted. I would love to be able to give a great service to every candidate that applies, but it's just not realistic, unfortunately. And sometimes it might be that right now and for that particular role, you're not quite right, but you could be great. And I've had that a lot of the time. As for me, I always keep really great candidates in a separate folder, and I'll come back to them, and that'll be something, and it'll be another engagement. You applied for a recent role, you weren't quite right for that one, but I'd love to have a chat with you now. Are you still on the market? So I think people definitely probably feel like they get ghosted, but I think there's a background to it from a recruiter's perspective, and it's not always intentional. It's not always something that will happen forever. It's just a case in point of that particular instance. I think, again, I'd love to give that service to everybody, but there's just not enough hours in the day, unfortunately.
My goodness, this clarifies so many things, and I never for instance, as I said, recruitment is one of my favorite topics because I know so little about it. And thank you so much for clarifying that. I'm sure in my audiences, if you ever think that you're being ghosted after an application, this is what may be happening, and it's not intentional. It's just pure numbers, and it's frequency and it's bandwidth. I don't think so. We have enough recruiters. Do you think we have enough recruiters to cover that kind of applications?
I mean, there's a lot of recruiters out there. I think there's always the opportunity for an industry to grow. I mean, the recruitment industry globally is a multi-billion-dollar organisation. Basically, it's huge. So yes, there definitely is the option for it to grow and to keep growing. But I think it isn't easy either. It's a difficult job. But kind of coming back to that, I think what people can do is if they do feel like they've been ghosted and it's a person that they're maybe particularly interested in connecting with, is instead of just doing that generic application, instead of just sending your CV, follow it up. Send an email, say, hey, look, I applied for this role recently. I didn't hear back from you. I obviously wasn't right. Totally fine, but I'd love a chance to connect with you, or connect with them on LinkedIn, or drop them a note on LinkedIn. We've got so many avenues now of how we can communicate and engage with people, just to get that. Are you the right person for me to speak to? And you're going to get a yes or a no, and then you can kind of go from there.
One thing is still hitting me, Hannah, and I really need your help to clarify this. 6 to 8 weeks to close a position is something.
That's not every single role.
Yeah, but
don't get me wrong. But I would say probably
an
average at the moment.
And I think, and this is my opinion as well, and we live in a democracy, and my opinion can be completely wrong, right? And I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. I think if the role is a priority, you can definitely change 6 to 8 weeks into 4 weeks.
Absolutely.
Right. I'll give you an example why I say that. When I was doing hiring for my team, the role was an absolute priority for me.
Yeah.
And we probably closed those 2 to 3 roles in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Done. Because we were very sure what we wanted, right? We had tabulated each and every attribute out of a candidate, what we wanted. We went there, we spoke to them, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So 2 things we wanted is cultural fit,
Yeah.
and you need to know you have done the job. So we could see that you have done that job in previous organization. We could check your reference, and we could check that bits and pieces of what it takes to, say, for example, be a digital marketer or be a creative person.
Yeah.
And it took us 4 weeks. But when I think it may be because it's not such a priority for them.
I don't know. I think, look, key hires within any organisation are always going to be a priority. I think sometimes people don't realise that the time that it takes to or the effort that you essentially have to put in to engage that top talent now. You know, I think gone are the days that it was all about the client and it was all about them selling themselves and, you know, them saying, well, you know, you've got to come into us, you know, we're only going to hire you if you really sell yourself. Now it's very much both ways. You know, the candidate has really the pick of the market at the moment. It's very much a candidate's market. So they've got multiple opportunities essentially on the table. So what's going to stand out for them in an interview process and why are they going to choose you? So those clients now have to start thinking about, okay, well, why are we different? You know, why are they going to choose us?
Yeah, ping pong tables.
Yeah, well, this is it. Dog-friendly offices is what I hear at the minute.
Which is the most cringe attribute that you find? Which is the most, what according to you is the most cringe attribute? We have ping pong tables.
It's funny because I think like there's a difference in terms of like that kind of office environment that a lot of people say, oh, you know, our culture's amazing. We have, you know, beers on a Friday. You know, we've got a great, you know, I don't know, PlayStation in the corner. We've got this and this. And that's not necessarily what people are looking for. You know, culture to them is a supportive environment, is a business that shows, you know, empathy, shows trust, shows that they can develop. You know, where's that, you know, career path come from for them? So there's definitely some differences there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great that you've got a beer fridge that opens on a Friday and everyone gets together and has a catch up on, you know, getting to know each other, fab. But that's not kind of the out and out selling points anymore, I don't think.
So Hannah, what's happening with this? I know this is again, I love talking about controversial topics because you're here with me, so why not? What are your thoughts upon this hybrid versus coming to office for work? And because the view is split.
Yeah.
If you ask for proponents of people who want everyone to come to office, you know, they quote some research, but equally people working from home, they quote numbers and research. They go like, hey, listen, it's cost me so much money to go to office. Why would I?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What have you found? What attracts talent?
Well, I think firstly, from the stance of employees looking, flexible working is probably the number one thing that they want.
Really?
Yeah. We did a recent poll actually. Literally, it was just a quick one on LinkedIn. It was nothing fancy, but we got engagement from about 400 people.
Wow.
And 68% put flexibility and hybrid working as number one as to what they wanted from, you know, the organisation they were potentially going into.
Sorry, I'm a market research person, so 68% was the top one. What was the second one?
The second one was benefits, I think.
Benefits.
Yeah, benefits. So what came into benefits was things like extra leave, you know, kind of holidays and things like that.
Hannah, this is amazing. So even if you take a pool of 100 people, if 68 of them are saying that, hey, listen, my priority is hybrid working. Yeah. That's where I want to go.
So it's not going to go, I don't think it's not going to go anywhere.
You reckon it's not going to go, is it?
I think there's definitely industries that have the need for more, I guess, more personal connection and people in the office. And I completely understand that. And recruitment is probably one of those industries. Like for me, I'm in the office kind of 2 to 3 days a week, but I love that. I love seeing my team. I love connecting with people. You know, I like hearing everyone on the phone and hearing how everyone's day is going. And, you know, also when it's not going great and when things are going wrong and you can all sit together and go, oh God, this is tough. You know, what are we going to do? How can we get through this together? Other industries, I know that people just enjoy and they've been able to kind of, you know, really, really perform at home. So I think it's really dependent on that organisation. But I think for any company saying you have to be in 5 days a week as part of their recruitment process, they will lose people within that process because they just don't want to do it.
And just that 15 seconds is going to go viral.
Yeah. Oh, God. I just don't think they want to do it. That, like, literally from everyone I speak to, and even people have asking to have it written into their contracts now as well. So.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? So candidates are asking, put the hybrid model attributes on the contract itself. The reason to that is what? Is there is there a lack of trust factor wherein they think, oh my God, they may say it now, but they later on they may go like, come to office?
Yeah, I don't think it's a trust thing. So I don't think you go into a new employer thinking, oh, I'm going to get screwed over here kind of thing. I think it's more about, any benefit that you get or anything that, essentially would come into a contract. Annual leave, for example, how many days annual leave you get, that would be in a contract. Your probation period, that would be in a contract. What your notice period would be, that would be in a contract. And I think things like hybrid working and the ability to have that flexibility is, just one of those other benefits that they're like, well, I just want to make sure that that's going to kind of stay, because it's one of the reasons that I'm choosing you as my next employer.
So probably a learning lesson, and you want to maybe write this down to my audience, is if your employer has given you a chance to work hybrid, put that in the contract.
You don't necessarily
Politely.
have to. You can if you want.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people are asking for it. But then also I think that is, sometimes it needs to be a bit more flexible from the candidate's perspective as well. Especially when you've got projects or programs of work, that are really, really important. Some weeks you might need to be in the office a little bit more often. But again, I think if you work for the right employer and you've got that trust and they respect that you're going to be responsible in your role, that week you're in more, maybe the week after you're not in as much kind of thing. So I think there needs to be some flexibility to a degree as well.
Right. That's very enlightening. So let's shift gears, Hannah. So let's move towards more on the educational side of your job.
Okay.
So I want to pick your brains on a lot of things. Now, coming into the market, I see these posts on layoffs every day, and I'm quite active on LinkedIn, but I am so scared to comment anything on that because I'm very passionate about helping people, but with a comment, I can't help people.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, I spoke to myself. I'm like, maybe if I can get a really experienced recruiter, and she can give some tips, that would actually help.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the whole journey of finding a job, the only time you speak to a recruiter is when you're looking for a job. You never get a chance to speak with a recruiter or listen to a recruiter, right?
Yeah.
So this is their chance to listen to you, right? And obviously there's so many candidates right now who are unfortunately being laid off.
Yeah.
So I think that makes the market more competitive.
Yeah.
To switch a job or to find a new job. From top of your mind, 4 to 5 tips that you would recommend in finding or hunting your desired job. You can take an example of marketing and branding because that's your expertise and people can then relate.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some really key things that you can do. I think, making sure you have a really strong presence on LinkedIn, on things like LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great tool that you can use, and you can reach some really key people within your market. And you mentioned, obviously, you feel like you commenting on someone saying that they've been laid off isn't going to really do anything. Actually, it probably will, because it will then share it with your market, will reach more people. So little things like that. So putting out a post, saying, or, you can change your profile now to open to work. So things like that. So it's a lot easier for a recruiter to find you. So there's definitely that kind of thing. So having a really strong kind of profile online, I would say, make sure it's updated, make sure it's got clear dates, make sure you've got clear kind of job titles, and if you can have any endorsements on there, great, because that is something that employers will look for. They'll look at your career development, but then they'll say, have they got any references on their profile, and things like that, which is great that LinkedIn has that opportunity for us to do that. Obviously, work with a specialist recruiter in your market. And there's a few ways that you can make sure that they're a specialist in terms of your domain. Hopefully, you would know them from word of mouth, again, from that network. I do that a lot. I get a lot of kind of work from people that I'll have worked with that have then got someone that they've then worked with that go, oh, they're great, they're now on the market. Can you, speak to Hannah? So finding that kind of key recruiter. I think don't what I think some people go into the trap of is they spend time just scouring job boards and searching for jobs that are going to be relevant for them and applying for every single one, and then they don't get any replies. Like you said, it comes back to that feeling of the ghosting, and it's really disheartening. It's really kind of it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to go through that process. So I think doing things that are going to be meaningful, so things that you might be able to get something out of or get some insight. So again, speaking to a recruiter, asking them what the market's like. They should know. They should be able to give you that guidance. Speaking to, previous employers, asking them, what they're hearing, what they're seeing. Are there any, challenges? Or picking, 5 key clients that you'd really love to work for, and reaching out to some key people in your network. Again, coming back to LinkedIn, I think you have the option of your network of like your first degree connections, second degree connections. Pick a company, Canva. Go on to Canva. How many first degree connections have you got there? Is there anyone there that would do an intro for you? Second degree, that kind of thing. I'd really love to work for Canva. I've got this experience. Can you pass my CV on to the right person? Instead of just sending your CV through, there's different ways in terms of engagement. And when you do, like I said, I think before earlier, when you do send your CV, follow it up. I love it when I get a CV that's sent through. I haven't maybe had the time that day to sit down and go through my applications, and I'll have a call before the end of the day saying, hey Hannah, I sent my CV to you earlier today. I'm really keen to have a chat with you about this role. Sometimes they're not right for that role, but it gives me that chance straight away to go, okay, look, you're probably not right for that job, but tell me a bit more about your experience, because they might be good for something else I've got.
So recruiters, to the notion which is out there in the public, recruiters do actually like people chasing up, or people following up is a better word.
I personally love it. I can't speak for every recruiter, because I'm now probably going to get like 8 mail or something. Everyone's going to have
What are you saying, Hannah? We don't agree with you.
No, I personally really like it. Because, like I said, those man hours in the day, I haven't got time to sit down and call every single person.
Going through an email, writing an email versus just taking a phone call, and it's like chalk and cheese.
Yeah. So for me, that works, and I love that. And probably I'll remember that person a little bit more than maybe someone that I've reached out to and they, haven't answered my phone call, or, I've sent them an email as a follow-up, and that other person that's called me to take that initiative is someone that I'll probably remember a little bit more as well.
Now, can I ask you, so this is one very specific question for which I got a message actually.
Okay.
When I posted that, I will either interview a recruiter or a sales. Someone messaged me and said, can you ask this question? This question gets me every time. And this question can get a lot of people. And it looks easy, but when you answer it, how people will take that answer is very subjective, right? And the question is, why are you leaving your current job?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes people are, or maybe so frustrated or emotional, they'll just say, it's just not going good. I've got this, I've got that, I've got some mental challenges, etc.
Yeah.
Sometitive people are very articulative, and they give exact reasoning why they're leaving.
Yeah.
Right. What are your thoughts? What should a candidate do when the focus is to get that job?
Yeah, I think with a recruiter, be really honest, because that recruiter can give you probably some guidance, and probably could read between the lines of, okay, how are you going to position this in the best way? 9 times out of 10, people are leaving for natural progression within their careers. Maybe that they've kind of hit a ceiling, in terms of where they go from their development. Maybe it's a case of they've gained some great experience, but, their team's changed, their managers changed, and they think, it's time for me for a change. So I think 9 times out of 10, there's never actually a bad reason behind people looking for a new job. I think sometimes it can be, it's that worry, isn't it? It's like, if they find out I'm leaving, I'll get a bad reference, or I'll get that.
That's the one.
Again, you don't, that's very rare that would ever happen. Legally, you can't have a really, really bad reference, essentially.
Oh, is it?
So you can't, it's like defamation. You can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you
can you talk a little bit more about that?
You can be honest. Yeah. Like you can be really honest, and
But you cannot character assassinate anyone.
Not really. No. But again, it's dependent on where you sit within an organisation and the reasons behind you moving on for a new role. So when you get asked that question, what are why are you looking for a new job? Why are you moving? I think just be honest, and focus it more. Probably a better tip would be to focus it more on what you want from the next role. So as opposed to what you're not getting, you're thinking about what you want to get. So it's that positive then of, okay, it's not quite, this role has been great, I've learned X amount, I've worked for some great people. What I'm really looking for now, though, is that next step in my career. A manager that's going to really support my professional development. A business that will really encourage, working within certain industries or something. I don't know. It could be anything, but really working on that way as opposed to thinking about the bad things.
Speaking of bad things, right? From top of your mind, maybe 3 to 4 things that employers cannot ask legally during an interview, because I think this is important. I think a lot of times, candidates, they are subjected to a line of questioning which may not be appropriate, and they don't know when an employer is crossing the line.
Yeah.
So from top of your mind, anything that candidates should be aware of as their legal rights or as their rights in general?
I don't think there's anything really... probably the one that would jump to mind is age. Like, you can't be asked your age. And funnily enough, it's always something that I say to candidates is to don't have like your birthday or date of birth on your resume. Like,
even though most of the companies ask you to put your birth date,
you will, but you can do that after. You can do that. You don't need to necessarily do that. But that is one thing that you can't be. Obviously, you can't discriminate against. You can't just, I'm trying to think, is there anything legally? I mean, I'm sure there is, but I don't really come up against those kind of things that often, to be honest.
Right. So sometimes I have heard, I don't know how much truth there is to it. I'm not an educated person on this topic.
Yeah.
But I've heard that you can't ask about someone planning to have a child or someone planning to getting married during that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think there's a degree to that in terms of, general interest in someone. I mean, I'm sitting here pregnant as well, so it's like
congratulations.
So it's like I'm not going to sit here and I wouldn't go into an interview obviously now because
is this your first? Is this your first?
It is, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You're in for a ride.
So yes, absolutely, you can't discriminate on somebody or a woman that wants to go in and have a family, because that might be 3-4 years down the line. That's not going to impact your business right there. So there's definitely some of those things that you have to avoid. But I think as an individual, if you've got a company asking you those kinds of questions or alluding to that kind of thing, are they the right company for you? Is that a business that you want to work for?
Absolutely.
Probably not.
No. Yeah.
So again, there's that kind of fine line of having a general interest in someone and getting to know them in an interview process of what's your have you got a family, whereabouts do you live, if you've got any holidays planned, understanding some of those kind of things as opposed to, ruling them out on that basis because it's going to impact their business in the next few years. Again, very, very rarely that would happen.
Speaking of discrimination, and I know we're going to let a lot of immigrants coming in, and you can not comment on it. It's up to you. But a lot of people have reached out and say that racism still does happen when so. I don't know if you know it or not. I think it was 60 Minutes or Channel 7. I don't know. They did a short documentary on how sometimes some recruiters, very minor, very few, I think, read the first name and then they move on.
Yeah.
Because it's too difficult to pronounce. Does that really happen? Does that still happen?
I'd hope not. I mean, it's definitely not something that I, have experienced or, with any of the businesses that I've worked for. I think, again, we're in Sydney, we're in Australia, we're in such a diverse culture. If you did that, you would probably not be very successful in what you were doing anyway.
Absolutely.
Because we're in a like I said, I'm English. I'm an immigrant here. So I think it's very, very different now. I certainly haven't experienced that. And don't work with anyone that would do that. I don't think that you can class a name on someone's skill and experience. Sometimes what can happen, I think, is local experience versus kind of overseas or international experience.
Yeah.
And again, that was something that I faced when I first came to Australia, is that I'd worked in London for 7 years, and I didn't know the Sydney market. And that was something that, was, in my interview processes with new businesses, they were like, how do you think you're going to tackle that? How are you going to overcome not knowing Sydney and not knowing how Australian businesses operate? And so I think sometimes that can be, maybe misconstrued as that racism thing, if it's not dealt with or handled correctly. But I would hope that definitely doesn't happen.
I think it gives me so many positive vibes, Hannah, that things are so much better now, right? I started looking my first job 12-13 years ago in Australia, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm an immigrant as well, and at times I did face, most of the times I did not.
Yeah.
Right. And I concur with you that it's such a beautiful country, right? I like to think, because I'm a very optimistic guy, I like to think before even reading my name, they will just go through the skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as a recruit, if you think from the business point of view, you want to close this position as quick as possible. The last thing you will see is name. First thing you will see is skills. How quick I can close this person, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure that person's going to be, someone that I can help, someone that, or a client that I can work with, or, what's their skill set, what's their title, where do they sit within the organisation, what kind of organisation do they work for? Those are the things that I look for when I open up a CV, as opposed to what's the name and
I think this is something very interesting for folks who are coming to Australia or coming to Sydney.
Yeah.
Looking for a job, looking for a better future. I think you've said it right. Spend some time in knowing Sydney. Spend some time in knowing this beautiful country.
Yeah.
Knowing how things operate here.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. You're gonna love it, right?
Yeah.
And once you know how thing operates, then it'll be much more easier for you to operate in this way.
But I think that comes back again to your own networks of who do you know? That for me was one of the things. I knew one girl that worked in recruitment in Sydney. So my first call was her. I was like, tell me what it's like. Tell me what's the great things, what's the hard things, what should I be aware of? Like, are there some really, really good agencies out there? And, I was lucky enough to get a job with one of those. So, yeah, I think just be aware and who do you know, ask the questions, do a bit of your research,
That's nice. And one last thing before we leave is, look, from a recruitment point of view, candidates keep applying, and then they get a lot of rejections. Yeah, and it's normal. It's usual.
Yeah.
It's business. They're not rejecting you as a person.
Yeah.
They're just rejecting your situation, your attributes in alignment with that particular job role. And because you've told so many positive things today, can you say maybe 2 or 3 positive things that will help my audience to not lose hope?
Yeah.
And maybe some tips when applying for a new role and not get disheartened.
Yeah, I think, first of all, make sure your CV is relevant for that role. I think 9 times out of 10, what can happen is because you go into this, abyss of hundreds of applications and hundreds of resumes, if your resume isn't highlighting your skill set on that first couple of paragraphs, that recruiter or that internal talent person is likely going to go, no, they're not right, because they're not going to carry on reading. So making sure that you grab your audience from that first kind of, few paragraphs, making sure that your job title's really relevant. And again, for example, for me, if you're applying for a marketing manager role, the hope would be that you've had a marketing manager title, or that if it's a progressional step for you, you've got a marketing specialist title. So definitely making those kinds of things key. Again, that kind of follow-up piece. So if it's with a recruiter, sending your CV, then maybe sending them a LinkedIn request. I've just applied for this job, I'd love to connect. They're going to, see that connection and connect with you. And then you've got a way to kind of speak with them. I think try not to get disheartened. It's really hard to do that. It is really hard. Don't take it personally. It might just be that at that time they might have had a really great candidate that they had already spoken to, or they already knew, or had come through their own network. And it isn't that they don't think you're great and that you haven't got great experience. It's just that right now you're not quite right for that role. But you never know if you kept that communication open again with the right people down the line, there could be those opportunities.
So clean out your resume, network as much as you can do on LinkedIn, reach out for a follow-up, and don't get disheartened.
Yes.
Right? It's not you, it's just your alignment with the particular role.
And I think as well, speak to recruiters, or speak to, if you're working with a recruiter, most people have worked with a recruiter at some stage in their career. Ask for advice,
or listen to this podcast.
Listen to this podcast,
and reach out to Hannah.
Yeah, exactly. We're happy to give advice. A lot of the relationships that I've had that have lasted for the past 6 years have been with people that I've maybe not helped in their job search, but I've given them some great insights, or I've given them some tips, or I might have recruited one person in their role, and then they come back to me and go, actually, I'm on the market. Now what do I do? How do I position myself as a really strong candidate? So speak to those key people for sure.
Hannah, thank you so much. You have no idea how enlightening this was.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.